Hey everybody, welcome to the video. This will be a full breakdown of the Cessna Citation 2 550 jet that crashed with NASCAR Legend Biffle and his family on board. I'll be breaking down all the latest information that we have. We'll be scanning through some B-roll imagery and just kind of reviewing that. And then I'll give you my opinion on being an airline pilot, having flown the Boeing 737 and Airbus A220. So let's just go ahead and let's dive right in to exactly what we're seeing. This is the Cessna Citation jet. So very good looking aircraft in my opinion. Been flying for a long time. This jet itself that was in the crash was built in 1981, but that's, kind of normal when it comes to aviation, flying these older aircraft and maintaining them extremely well is the name of the game to make sure that they're able to continue to handle the stresses of aviation for decades. But, the older the aircraft, the more maintenance issues that could happen. So will that play a part? We'll see as the official investigation ramps up. So here's a quick depiction of exactly what happened. So we'll watch this fly through. As you can see, they take off from runway 10, then they turn to the west. They're at 2,000 feet now. And then looks like they're gonna climb up here relatively high. So this is showing actually 4,000 feet of altitude here. AGL 3,000, so it's showing the AGL on the right side. 1,800, they descend relatively rapidly right here. So very strange. So it looks like he descends right there to get below the weather. So at this point right here, it's just very odd, that rapid drop in altitude that we're seeing happen right here. At this point right here, I want to know what happened. This is one of the crucial determiners on why they descended so rapidly, because it seems like even with an engine failure, they wouldn't have descended that rapidly at that moment right there. So they're going to go from, looks like even more, 4,000 feet, 3,300 at their apex, 3,300 feet AGL out here at the teardrop, and then they start their descent, 2,900. So that's a relatively rapid descent right there. So about 1,000 feet happening relatively quickly, and then boom, 1,200. So now he's likely below the weather deck. The weather deck was said to be at 1,200 feet. So this point right here, maybe trying to get below the weather to actually spot the runway. That could be something. But looks like there's good GPS, obviously, with knowing where the airport is. With the cloud deck at 1,200 feet, a broken layer at 1,200 feet. And if you look at this area right here, so he's coming in, he likely gets eyes on the runway right as soon as he breaks below that broken deck. And then here, trucking towards the runway, executing a bit of a downwind, and then getting a little more spacing out here for the teardrop in. So again, descending that low underneath the weather, that's just not standard procedure. If you had the thrust available, you would just come and do a GPS approach. So you would fly out here, do a box pattern. Let's say you had one engine operating. Okay, we got one engine, we're still good. Fly the typical GPS approach and come out and operate from here. But getting below the weather deck just seems like we don't know the exact situation. We don't know if there's avionics or something like that going on, but this is very non-standard. The pilot is said to have been a former Delta Airlines pilot who's flying the aircraft. It's said that his son was on board. Was this pilot carrying the ability to fly as a single qualified pilot? That's all going to be investigated. But when it comes from flying Delta Airlines to flying aircraft like this, it's very different. But something at Delta you would never do is go below the weather deck and do a visual approach. That's just totally non-standard. And what's going to happen and what's going to result is there will be contact with the approach lighting system outside of the runway here. So as the teardrop is executed, so as this pilot's coming in, flying this, they're going to do this teardrop entry, and then they're going to come in extremely low, and they're going to have forward momentum. They're going to impact trees, approach lighting, and then forward momentum that actually propels them across the runway. So very tragic incident, but basically totally lined up and set on the course to land just short. So that does make me think of a low thrust situation. That's definitely something that comes to mind. Let's look at some of the footage. So this is tough to watch, but this shows that forward propulsion. Yeah, so the aircraft, it's going to impact short of the runway, and it's going to impact hard, and that's what's going to create all those different flames, all the different smoke, igniting all the jet fuel. It had just taken off, only been airborne for 10 minutes. So that's going to make this explosion even more intense and impactful. Dang, that's just rough. The fact that they had the forward momentum, they're pretty much exactly lined up on the runway. So that's just a very tragic situation. We'll watch some of this B-roll play through. So NTSB, so this is the trees outside of the runway. As you can see, impact, lots of impact of those trees, actually knocking them over out by the fence. And then that's going to be the result of it. Basically nothing left. I mean, that much jet fuel on board and that much of a fire. Looks like some of the engine is still remaining, which is going to be helpful for the investigation. Yeah, and then the nose compartment there, likely baggage can go in that nose compartment. But that's the cockpit situation right there. I mean, you can see basically nothing left. Essentially zero chance of survival in a situation where the fireball just consumes the entire aircraft like that. Lots of damage due to the fire. But the impact is going to cause an extreme amount of damage too, impacting that hard. Looks like, okay, there we go. Gear is going to get ripped off by the fence. So that's how low it came in, low enough for it to actually rip off the landing gear. So the pilot's probably pulling back with everything they've got. And at that point, your jet is hitting and impacting different things. So that's what makes me think of a low thrust situation. Because if you had there's the approach lighting. See how high up the approach lighting goes? So it's going to go basically above the tree level or right with the tree level. And then there's that debris field because the airport is up above. So it's actually going to hit. And then the debris is actually going to go up as the aircraft impacts and then continuously skids across, taking out all the approach lighting. Again, lined up correctly, just low thrust, low ability to get the aircraft to the landing surface, but lined up relatively perfectly. So again, brings up the low thrust situation, shreds of metal there. There's the engine. So that'll be completely dissected and looked at by the NTSB, and they'll determine was there an engine issue prior to impact. Just amazing how these teams work together to figure out all the exact details to keep everybody safer moving forward. That's the number one goal. They turn this shredded hunk of metal into lessons that can, hopefully make aviation safer around the globe. And then there's different teams. So propulsion team, engine teams, metalworking teams, avionics teams. And it sounds like the avionics team and the engine teams are some of the main ones that they're focused on in this situation. So the avionics, diving into what the GPS system was doing, diving into how were the different avionics working and providing information to the pilots. That's going to be huge when it comes to this investigation. You can just see barely anything left due to that massive fire that's going to consume the aircraft. So quickly, just some review of exactly what went on. A single text message from an unidentified passenger was timestamped at 10:17 local time. And it simply read emergency landing. It was sent to a family contact during the aircraft's base turn. And that correlates with crew awareness of an unspecified issue approximately 10 minutes post takeoff is the entire length of the flight. So radar data confirms the aircraft climbed to 1,500 feet AGL on that westbound heading and then did that 180-degree turn back. No mayday call, no emergency declaration was transmitted. And it's an uncontrolled field. So if they're going to transmit anything, it's just going to go to other aircraft in the area, which makes me think why they didn't really decide to transmit a lot. So obviously this on-scene evidence is going to tell us a lot with that ground impact, and it's going to extend 1,800 feet from the actual crash site itself. The NTSB is going to focus on pilot decision-making, potential landing gear anomalies, hydraulic system integrity, flight controls, the engine situation, and then crew qualifications. So the captain is said to have been holding an airline transport pilot certificate with 3,200 flight hours. How much did the first officer have? Who was the first officer? They'll do a full review of their medical and their duty logs. So that'll be a big part of the rundown there. Overall, the aircraft itself. So let's quickly talk about the Cessna Citation jet. So Cessna Citation jet, 1981 is when this thing was built. It holds 6 to 8 passengers, 47-foot in length, wingspan's 52 feet. Full capacity of gas, 742 gallons. Two Pratt & Whitney Canada JT15D 48 turbofans. Capable engines each produce 2,500 pounds of thrust. The engines are mounted low on the fuselage, as you can see below the tail, below that T-tail. Max speed, Mach 0.7, about 440 miles per hour. And the endurance of this thing, about 1,100 nautical mile endurance. It's got a ceiling of 43,000 feet, so it gets up relatively high. The ground roll, 2,500 feet, so it doesn't take much to land this thing. Some broader implications of this whole thing. There is not an FDR, so a flight data recorder, but there is a CVR. The FDR would record the actual flight path of the aircraft. This CVR, the cockpit voice recorder, will tell us what was being said inside the cockpit itself. So we'll get the full breakdown on that as we move forward. And no emergency call, but likely that's just how it's going to be when you're operating on an uncontrolled field. So quickly reviewing some of this that we're seeing on X. So unfortunately, this is the crash scene. Again, not much is going to be left in a crash like this. It's just going to basically, the amount of jet fuel is going to take out everything. So what do I think happened? If we look at, I think this is kind of the best representation to look and see the actual flow of the aircraft. So if you take off like this on one runway, and then you come back and land on the other for a teardrop, it's a dire situation. So I think there's going to be something involved with the propulsion and the ability for this thing to remain airborne. Did that have to do with some sort of a landing gear situation? It could, but if you have a landing gear issue, it's not that big of a deal. Landing gear issue, you just get up to altitude, you solve it, you stay below a certain speed. So let's say, whatever the limitations are, 200 miles per hour or so, just stay below that speed and then you're good to go. Come back and land, no big issue there. So that's a factor. Landing gear, not as big of a factor, but propulsion coming in low like that, coming in low and striking the light poles and striking the trees, that is a very strange situation. So for that situation to take place, a couple different things. So could the pilot have just wanted to get below the cloud deck because of an avionics issue? That's very non-standard. But if you have zero avionics, like let's say some sort of an electrical failure, then you really don't have many options. You got to get below that weather deck if you have zero instruments to talk to you. So that would be a very non-standard situation. Rarely ever happens, if ever, in aviation. But that could have been a factor. And then secondly, propulsion. So fighter jets do what's called a SFO, a simulated flame out pattern, where you compute the amount of altitude and distance it takes to come in and land on a runway without an engine. But that is totally non-standard when it comes to commercial aviation or any civilian aviation like this. So it's kind of seat of the pants, be a pilot, make it happen. So was the pilot doing that to get below the weather deck and then trying to make this teardrop work, but not having enough altitude to make it happen? Because if they did have good engines and they saw that they were low after they popped out of the broken layer at 1,200 feet, then they could have just gone around and tried it again. So that's why I believe there's some sort of a propulsion issue here. There'll be a full investigation, a full breakdown. Really appreciate you guys checking out this video. I'll keep you updated as this goes down. The NTSB did release 2 different briefings. I've got reactions to those as well for you to check out. Thoughts and prayers with the Biffle family and to all those affected by this tragic incident. I hope everybody's safer after this NTSB investigation is done. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you want more from the channel, if you want me to do more videos like this, more breakdowns, go ahead and join the channel memberships and you'll join the Max Ready Room. In the Max Ready Room, we do lives, 2 to 3 lives per week where we break down everything from aviation to geopolitics to military conflicts around the globe. I think you'll get a ton of value out of it. So click that link in the description, become a channel member. I'll see you on those lives for the channel memberships. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you on the next video. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.